Are we in another commodity supercycle? Are we in the fifth commodity supercycle? Or for that sake, is this the first commodity supercycle of the 20th century? Before jumping on to commodities supercycle, it is important to understand what exactly is a commodity. So, commodity is anything that is used to manufacture a final product. For example, if you're manufacturing petrol, for that sake, you need a commodity, and commodity in that case would be oil, which is crude oil or Brent oil or raw oil, as they say. For example, if you're manufacturing gas, for that sake, you would need natural gas, which would be the commodity, and gas would be the final product. Now that we know what commodity is, we can move on to commodity supercycle. As per this definition, for a commodity's rise to become a supercycle, it should meet three criteria, says Eric Norland. The trend should be broad-based, meaning it should include the majority of major commodities. It should have a duration of 5 or more years, and finally, the price rise should be supersized, as in a tripling or more. Simply put, Eric Norland is trying to say that if you want to classify a price rise as a commodity supercycle, it is essential that the price rise is broad-based. That means that the prices of commodities across the board are rising, and the duration of the time of the price rise is for a prolonged period of time. It shouldn't be for like maybe 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. It should be for a longer period of time, let's say 5 years, 10 years, or even up to 30 years. So far, we have had 4 commodity supercycles to date. The first one happened in the late 19th century when the United States of America was undergoing intense industrialization. Now, what happens when a country industrializes? That means they are building industries, and industries need to manufacture final products which can be utilized by the society. Now, to manufacture those final products, the industry definitely needs commodities. It needs raw materials. It needs iron ore, copper, aluminum, you name it. They need all those things. Now, those industries spurred up the demand for these commodities. They were importing it from around the globe, which consequently resulted in the increase of prices of commodities across the board, which resulted in the first commodity supercycle to date. Now, the second commodity supercycle was basically driven by one main factor, which was World War II. Now, what happened during the World War II? Basically, the entire globe went on a war against itself, and for that sake, they needed weapons. They needed bullets, they needed fighter jets, they needed tanks. All these required metals of all forms and in intense quantities. So basically, they were importing metals from around the world, which created a demand-supply imbalance. The demand soared up to great heights while the supply was limited. Producers were unable to match the demand. This resulted in an increase of prices of commodities across the board around the globe. Top that up with the fact that after World War II, the nations had to rebuild themselves up because they literally destroyed the hell out of each other. Now they had to rebuild their societies. They had to rebuild buildings, factories, you name it. Specifically, 2 countries were leading the way, Germany and Japan. These 2 societies required commodities in intense amounts to rebuild their societies. For that sake, they were importing commodities from around the world. These 2 factors, the World War II and the post-reconstruction efforts after World War II, they resulted in the second commodity supercycle. The third commodity supercycle was driven by 2 main forces. The first one was the reindustrialization of Europe and Japan. Now, as I told you, what happens when you industrialize a society? You build industries. Industries manufacture final goods. Goods are consumed by the society. And for that sake, industries need commodities. They need metals. They need raw materials of all sorts to manufacture those goods. The second factor, which pushed the world into a third commodity supercycle, was the oil embargo of 1973. Now, what happened during this oil embargo? The Arab neighboring states of Israel, they all invaded Israel, and there was a war. During that time, Saudi Arabia was the leader of OPEC. OPEC stands for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Now, what did OPEC do? OPEC stopped exporting oil to any state around the globe, which helped Israel during the war in one way or another. So what happened? The countries which supported Israel, they weren't getting any oil. They don't know where to fulfill their demand for oil from. So what happened was the demand remained constant. The demand was still there. And the supply before the embargo was like this. But after the embargo, the supply went down. So there was an imbalance. And you all know what happened what happens when there is an imbalance in supply and demand. The prices shoot up, and that's what happened. The prices shot up. The prices of all commodities across the board shot up. And this sent the world into a third commodity super cycle. The fourth and the last commodity super cycle, also known as the first commodity super cycle of the 20th century, was fueled by BRICS countries. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, what happened during this subcycle? Basically, these BRICS states, they were developing, they were rapidly industrializing. And as you all know what happens when you industrialize, you need raw materials to build industries, and you know what happens after that. The society consumed. But specifically, one nation, one state was industrializing very fast. Its GDP was through the roof. You got it, China. China basically fueled the fourth commodity super cycle. As these nation states were industrializing, their population was being lifted out of poverty into middle class. The middle class of these state nations was expanding, and the first thing that happens when you are lifted out of poverty is that you improve your diets, specifically protein diets. These nations started importing agriculture commodities alongside other commodities as well. Now, this pushed the world into the fourth commodity super cycle. To put this into perspective, the price of copper during the 90s, it was roughly around $2,000 per ton. But during this economic super cycle, it wasn't even available at $10,000 per ton. Same happened with oil. During the 90s, oil was available at around $20 per, I'd say barrel, yeah, $20 per barrel. But during the economic super cycle, it touched its all-time high of $140 per barrel. As you can see in this graph, the commodity super cycle began at around the year 2000 and peaked in the year 2015. After that, it started declining. The prices of commodities started reducing. This happened when China implemented monetary and fiscal tightening. Now the question is that, are we in a fifth commodity super cycle? As per the data by World Bank 2021, metal prices rose by 48% over the course of 2021 alone. Natural gas and coal prices reached record highs, with the former rising by 69% in Q3 and the latter by 44%. Agricultural products saw a rise of 22% in just 2021. Now, I've done my research on why I'm convinced that we might be entering into a fifth commodity super cycle. I might be wrong, but I would like to put my research before you. You can always let me know in the comment section what you think about this. The first reason which convinces me that we are probably headed into the fifth commodity super cycle is the energy transition. That is, we are transitioning from an oil-based economy, from a petrodollar economy, into a renewables economy. As you can see in the graph before you, the graph on the left side shows the demand of copper, specifically for electric vehicles. In 2023, you can see the demand is considerably lower, but by the year 2030, it will be maybe 4 or 5 times higher of what it is right now. And on the right side, you can see the demand of copper In other renewable sectors, the blue bar shows you the demand which is of 2020, and the green bar shows you the demand which could possibly touch in the 2030s. Now, copper is also known as Dr. Copper. It is a healthy indicator, it is a significant indicator of economy, because copper is used in almost every product that is manufactured in a society. So when the demand for copper rises, its prices rises. This shows you that the economy is developing. When its demand goes down, the prices goes down. This means the economy is slowing down. We will leave that for another blog. Let's move on to the next image. Before moving on to my next reason, there is something very important I would like to highlight here. Now, oil is also known as a commodity, and historically, alongside all other commodities, oil has also risen with other commodities as well. But this time things could probably be a little different. This time oil might not be increasing in prices. According to this article, James Luke said that in a nutshell, the returns environment is very uncertain. Commodity investments, particularly in the energy and the metal space, are very long cycle, because you're essentially investing for 15 to 20 years. Most observers and government officials are telling you that oil demand is going to collapse in 5 years as the world transitions to clean energy. So would you want to make multi-billion dollars investments into something which could well be a stranded asset less than halfway through the life of the asset? Basically what they're trying to say is that since we are entering into a renewable era, an era which might not need oil as much as it would need renewable sources of energy, so the demand of oil might fall down. And when the demand falls down, the prices also goes down. The next reason which convinces me that we are into a probable fifth commodity supercycle is the increase in demand for agricultural commodities, mainly because of two reasons. Reason number one is that the world population is increasing rapidly. This means more mouths to feed, and the arable land is reducing in quantity. The second reason is the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, Ukraine was also known as the wheat basket of Europe, which means it was supplying wheat to Europe. But that is not the case anymore. Russia has invaded Ukraine. It has imposed a blockade on Ukraine. That means Europe's demand is still there, but supply is not there anymore. So Europe has to import from somewhere else, which will put pressure on the existing supply of wheat. That means more demand, less supply, and you all know what happens. When supply and demand imbalances, the prices go through the roof. So this is another reason which convinces me that we could be headed into another commodity supercycle. The next reason which convinces me for a probable fifth commodity supercycle is the underinvestment in the past. Now, as per this Reuters article, years of underinvestment in mining of metals essential to energy transition, supply shocks, and high energy prices will continue to drive commodity prices higher. In the second paragraph, it states, combined with COVID-related logistical issues and demand for transparency on sustainability, these factors have brought together all the ingredients for a perfect storm in commodity markets. Basically, what the article means is that there has been a lack of investment in the metals which are essential to for transition into the renewable era. There was very little investment in the commodities which were required to manufacture electric vehicles, which was required to manufacture solar panels, which was required to manufacture lithium batteries. But what's happening now is that the demand for lithium batteries, for electric vehicles, for solar panels is through the roof. But no one invested in the commodities required for these products. So again, we have an imbalance. The demand is up, the supply is rising very slowly. The producers are failing to meet the rising demand for these commodities. Top that up with the fact that there is a supply chain crisis around the world these days. All these factors are pushing us into the fifth probable commodity supercycle. The last reason which convinces me that we are headed into a probable fifth CSC is the fact that the dollar is weakening day by day. it's dying. It could probably lose its status as the reserve currency of the world. Now, what happens when the dollar loses its power? The things that are priced in dollar, they will get more expensive. All the commodities out there, the copper, iron ore, aluminium, cobalt, gold, silver, you name it, they're all priced in dollars. So when dollar becomes weaker, these commodities will become expensive. Last but not least, how can you profit from this commodity super cycle? What I'm about to say is in no way investment advice. This is simply what I believe. This is simply what I'm also implementing on myself. This is also where my resources are directed. If what I said is true, if a commodity super cycle is imminent, that means the prices of commodities are about to skyrocket. And if that is the case, that means that's where you should be putting your money into. If you buy commodities right now, you could probably be filthy rich in a couple of years. Now, how do you buy commodities? You can buy commodity focused exchange traded funds, also known as ETFs, or you can directly buy shares of companies which are directly manufacturing commodities. But there is one piece of advice which I can definitely bet on, which I'm sure will give you guaranteed results. There is one commodity you should definitely invest in. That is your own knowledge. In the past, the data was not democratized. It was in the hands of a few powerful elite. They used to make powerful decisions based off of that data, and they used to profit immensely off of it. But now situation has changed. Data is democratized. It is freely available. All you need is a mobile phone and a screen, and you can easily navigate your way around. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I hope you like the video. Thank you.